Hello, good afternoon, everyone. So more people are joining. I think we can start. I'm very happy to be here with you today to bring the experience of the International Data Spaces Association and actually of a whole community behind it. If you were asked, what's the minimum denominator of innovators? So what's the characteristics that all innovators have? That's actually to encounter a challenge and see an opportunity there. And the opportunity that this community is trying to solve is this one here. 80% of industrial data is never used. And we see similar situations also in other domains. Of course, all of you have in mind some cases where data is useful, in your company probably, and this is becoming more and more important because we actually live in a connected world. And the power of data is multiplied if we consider the possibilities that you have with it in a connected world. So we see we have a higher variety of components, customers want a higher customization. We also need to stick to some new sustainability imperatives. And of course, data is key if you want to be competitive in the market. So you cannot stay competitive if you don't make your processes more efficient. And we see this also if we look at how the data economy is evolving. You can see it here. We are moving from bilateral one-on-one partnership for data sharing to close communities, but we are now entering a new phase where we see a federation of data sharing partnerships. But why then do we see that challenge there? Only 80% of industrial data is never used. The reason is in this slide here, that on one hand side we have some interoperability challenges. That's also already a big challenge to overcome, but the other challenge is that companies are not that willing to share data, right? So what we need to achieve is a balance between unlimited interoperability and the ability to maintain control over the data and how the data is used, so that we can really make the most and keep the value of the data as an economic asset. And at IDSA, that's what we call data sovereignty. Data sovereignty happens in a new paradigm for data sharing, which is the concept of data spaces. A data space is not a physical place. That's a federation of different endpoints that are able to exchange data in an easy way with each other. And in these data spaces, of course, we want to ensure an ecosystem of trust where the data provider always maintains control over the data. But how does a data space look like in concrete? You see here an example from Industry 4.0. You see different endpoints here, different machines, different companies. You can also see different clouds, marketplaces. All these different endpoints can be interoperable in an easy way, and the data providers can maintain control over how the data is used thanks to some usage control policies. You're probably more familiar with the concept of access control, which means granting access to some players under specific requests for a specific purpose. What we want to achieve is to extend this concept, making sure that you can always maintain control over how the data is used after access is granted. That's what we call access control. And that's a key aspect in data spaces. Another key aspect that I want to highlight here is what we mean with interoperability. So interoperability can happen at different levels. For sure, the easiest thing that probably came up to your mind is this one, so the technical interoperability. What we mean with that, a series of things. More simply, you can think about the interfaces that you need to connect different IT systems. But in a data space and in general, when you share data, you also need to take care of these semantic interoperability so that you can really extract the true meaning of the data. Data spaces are something complex, as you can imagine. You have different players, and you also have to manage these interactions. So it's not just a matter of technical agreements. You also have to take care about some operational agreements, and of course you have to take care about the legal agreements between partners. So this is really complex, especially if you think about how to govern these different levels of interoperability. This is indeed a key part of data spaces to manage this complexity. But this complexity is even bigger if you think that we don't want data spaces to be the new silos. So all these levels of interoperability should be actually ensured between different data spaces, different data sharing ecosystems. That's why IDSA, my association, has been created to come up with a standard that manages all these levels of complexity and to enable data spaces and data sovereignty to happen. IDSA was created 7 years ago. It's one of the pioneers, if not the pioneer, in on this topic. The association has grown a lot. We have currently 140 members on a global scale. We have members from 22 countries. And what's interesting is that the members co-create this standard in a democratic way, but the standard is open, so anyone can use it. What are the pillars that compose this standard? You can see them here. We want to enable, of course, unlimited interoperability. So we want all these different endpoints to be able to share data in an easier way. And also cross-domain. So a key aspect is enabling data spaces to have some common denominator, also from the semantic perspective, so that you can, I think the microphone is not working properly. Can you hear me now? Okay, perfect. So creating also a semantic layer that can ensure cross-domain interoperability. And we've been working on this for a very long time. We are also working toward standardization on this. IDSA is practically a standardization organization. The connector, which is a gateway, a key aspect of the reference architecture model of the standard, is already a DIN specification in Germany, and we're also working on standardization at international level. Another key aspect is, as you can see here, enabling trust. This is, of course, something difficult to manage. One aspect how we do that is through a certification scheme. So one of the working groups within the association has also created and came out with a certification scheme so that you can always prove that you stick to the functionality and security requirements. And the last point is the governance, of course. And this can be seen twofolded. On one hand side, of course, the governance on how the data is used, and that's the concept of usage control that I mentioned earlier. The other aspect is the governance of these ecosystems, and that's why we also take care of supporting agreements for all these different levels. At least, especially for the operational and the legal agreements, we give some guidelines, and then each data space can then develop their own domain-specific agreements. You may ask, pretty cool, but what's the current state? The IDEA standard is now moving from a research environment to market-ready solutions. And we at IDSA are heavily working on trying to give transparency of how much the standard is being adopted currently. If you go to the IDSA website, you will find a tool like this. And in there, you will find more than 100 cases. You will find cases from different maturity levels. And the closer you go to the center of the radar, the more mature the projects are. So live data spaces. You will find here also one-on-one cases or cases between a close number of partners, but also true data spaces with hundreds of participants. Another important thing, data spaces, of course, can bring value to different domains. In the current RADA, as you can see, we have a few domains. We're actually working on a new version of the RADA, but if you're interested in a specific domain, just go to the RADA. You will find lots of examples, for example, from the energy domain, from the mobility, manufacturing. These are the domains that are more advanced with regards to data spaces. And I would like to make it a bit more concrete. So give you a few examples of data spaces and especially about the lighthouses that we have. This one is a project called Catena X. Has anyone heard about it already? Okay, I see a few hands. This is a very popular project, especially in the German ecosystem, because it's a German project, and the goal is to create a data space dedicated for supply chains in automotive. The project started in August 2021 with this ambition. It's, of course, following the IDSA standard, and you can see in the next slide that it managed to gather all the important players in the ecosystem. So we have all the big automotive providers, we have software companies, and they're all working jointly, also in a competitive way, to create this data space and bring value to the community. One important thing that's worth mentioning, they're working together to develop some components open source. So if you're interested in this domain, please check out their website, check out their GitHub, and you will find a lot of more information there. Another example that I would like to bring to the table is this one. This is the German mobility data space, and it also has the ambition to create a data space for the mobility sector. This is also a German project, and it has also the ambition, so gathering, as you can see, all the big players in Germany, but both lighthouses has the ambition to expand and, of course, network and partner up with players also abroad. So this is a key aspect. We don't want data spaces to become the new silos. We want data spaces to be interoperable and to be open to connect the value chain also globally. What I find pretty interesting is the Catena X project is actually already working in this direction. There are some tests ongoing with another up and running data space in the Netherlands that's called Smart Connected Supply Network. They're testing there. They're also making some tests with Japan. So things are moving. And this is indeed the goal of my presentations today, to give you an idea of how much has been happening in the past 6-7 years, so that if you're interested, this is the right time to start learning and start experimenting with data spaces. There are other associations that are dealing with data spaces from different angles. Probably most of you have heard about Gaia X. We are working really closely with Gaia X. We are also funding member. Other organizations are, for example, Fiverr, focusing more on the smart city domain. There are some companies that are providing some technologies. So the IDEA standard is technology agnostic, but we can leverage different technologies, and we are partnering up with companies that offer technologies to implement data spaces in a certain way. We are well connected with iShare in the Netherlands, if you know them, and others. So we are partnering up and creating synergies so that we can really make data spaces happen. You see also a Japanese logo. We are also well connected there. We have members also in China. They're also pretty active in Australia, and we are now expanding really on a global level. You probably also have heard about new regulations. the Data Act, Data Governance Act, all these regulations are pointing in a direction, making clear some requirements for data sharing. And we believe that data spaces are really the way to go to fulfill also some of these requirements. And of course, following these regulations, funding are coming, not just from the European Commission, but also a lot of funding at national level. Of course, Germany is really advanced with that. We see similar situations growing also in the Netherlands, in Finland, in Spain. So this is really the right time for data spaces to thrive. If you would like to know more, we have a booth here at the Hub Berlin. We are close to the main stage. So if you would like to get in contact with us, ask which opportunities can be identified with your business, feel free to drop by, and we'll be happy to consult you a bit on this. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Giulia.